This is the i4 and it's a very interesting addition to BMW's India lineup. For one, it's an all-electric model, and then there are some of the figures of interest. A WLTP range of 590 kilometers, a 340 horsepower motor, a 5.7 second 0 to 100 kph time, and finally, the price. 69.9 lakh rupees ex-showroom, which, if you think about, isn't all too far off the petrol and diesel sedans that you've been eyeing all these years.
But let's not get lost in facts and figures. Let's talk driving feel. Of course, what gets you first in an i4 is engine sound or the lack of it. A synthesized note on ignition tells you it's all systems go. Aside from which, the i4 is so quiet inside, it makes a 320D sound utilitarian.
Of course, there's not much noise from the motor, and the overall ambience from the cabin is very soothing, very hushed. You don't hear much of the outside world. Though if you really pay attention, there is some tire noise that makes its way into the cabin.
It's an EV, so it's expected to be quiet, but it's also a BMW and it's expected to be fun. The news is good. India gets the i4 in eDrive 40 form with a rear-mounted motor driving just the rear wheels. This electrically excited synchronous motor produces a strong 340 horsepower and 430 Newton meters. It's not the most powerful EV you can buy, but there's much to like.
The i4's performance is very friendly and exploitable. In the sense, you can actually make use of all the power at your disposal. Of course, instant acceleration is the name of the game here too, and it is thrilling. Say, should you just want a quick kick on an empty road like this, or should you find yourself on an empty drag strip, the i4 has enough to keep you entertained. The power comes in smoothly, it comes in fast, and should you keep the throttle pedal pressed, you'll note that the performance doesn't hit a wall as is often the case in EVs. This one, it has a very sustained build of speed, which is nice.
The i4 is limited to a top speed of 190 km an hour. In real-world driving, that instant zip at all speeds is all that matters. The other happy takeaway is that the i4 handles like a BMW should.
The i4 is a good few hundred kilos heavier than the 3 Series, so you would expect it to be perhaps a bit lazy in the corners. The good news is, it isn't. It's quite an entertaining drive. There is a good amount of agility. The steering is very smooth. It's not pin sharp as we've come to expect from BMW, but it's very smooth and it gives a lot of feedback.
The low position of the heavy battery has a role to play here, granting the i4 a lower center of gravity than a 3 Series. Keen drivers will really take to the on-throttle adjustability that only rear-wheel drive gets you. And with Regen steering and motor modes, you can fine-tune the experience to your liking. The i4 isn't just fun to drive as electric cars go, it's fun to drive, period. And with 590 kilometers of claimed range, which works out to an easy 400 kilometers plus in real-world driving, you have the confidence to drive to your favorite roads and make it back to base without the need to map out charging stations everywhere. On the everyday bits of the drive, you'll appreciate the smooth build of power, pleasant weight at the steering, and nicely tuned regen braking.
The braking is very well judged. You really can't tell the transition between the regenerative brakes and the actual friction brakes. You can adjust the level of regeneration between 3 levels. There's also a B mode, which maximizes the effect of regeneration and will bring the car to a halt, enabling single pedal driving.
A word of appreciation for the front coil springs and rear air suspension combo that keeps body control well in check and also delivers a surprisingly comfy ride.
Sporty as the i4 is, it's also surprisingly plush in its ride comfort. The tires take a lot of that initial impact, and the well-judged damping softens the blow further. You have to remember the i4 gets an air suspension at the back. It's just that when you approach a speed breaker, you will miss that option to raise the ride height. This is a fairly low-slung car and it positions its heavy battery low in the body. So if you're not careful, you will have the body slam against the surface below, and that isn't a very pleasant feeling.
When it's time to charge, your options include DC fast charging at up to 205 kilowatts, though an 11 kilowatt AC wall box supplied with the car will likely be the go-to choice for most owners. At the charging station, hotel porch or sports car mate, the BMW i4 will sure draw attention. This is a classic long-bonneted BMW sedan with the added glamour of a flowing roofline, frameless windows and a high-deck boot. Our test car is further embellished with the optional M Performance Kit that brings in stylized bumpers and more attractive 18-inch rims. As for the buck-toothed look up front, the oversized kidney grille is shouty and aggressive but looks better in the metal than it does in the visuals. To some extent, that is. What's not visible is that much of the grille is closed off with active flaps at the bottom that open in 10 stages depending on powertrain and battery cooling requirements. The i4 is the electric derivative of the 4 Series Grand Coupe, which itself is a derivative of the 3 Series sedan we're familiar with. That connect is most evident inside.
Now, to talk of the i4's interior in a bit more detail, if you've been in a BMW 3 Series, you'll find yourself in a familiar surrounding in an i4. The lower portion of the dashboard is pretty much identical. Even the center console is shared, though there are certain detail differences like the blue surround on the gear lever, the blue start-stop button, and the blue surround around the BMW logo, which are small differences to tell you that this is an all-electric BMW. The real differences are on the upper portion of the dashboard. Like the latest BMWs, the i4 also gets what BMW calls its curved display, which is essentially 2 screens fused together to give the look of one large screen. Now, ahead of me is the 12.3-inch instrument cluster. It's very easy to refer to and changes look and theme with the driving mode you choose. The second screen is a 14.9-inch touchscreen and it is really slick. It uses anti-reflective surfaces, so it's very bright and easy to refer to on the go. And it also packs in very handy features like wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay. What I do wish is BMW hadn't bundled the climate control settings also into the screens. It would just have been easier to have manual controls somewhere in easier access.
Features-wise, the i4 gets LED headlights, ambient lighting, 3-zone climate control, a sunroof, powered steering adjust, powered seats with driver seat memory, a 17-speaker Harman Kardon sound system and a reversing assistant. There's no 360-degree camera and keyless entry is also missed. The i4 doesn't get ADAS features in India, but the body shell was found stable in Euro NCAP's crash tests that earned the BMW a 4-star rating.
Of the other things, this is a properly high-grade cabin with lots of soft touch materials and also open pore wood on the dashboard, which really lends it a premium feel. I also really like the sports seats. They really hold you well when you're cornering hard.
The i4 is great if you're sat up front, but not so much for those at the back.
Where the i4 doesn't feel quite as special for a car that costs as much as it does is the rear seat. Now, as is quite evident, I'm quite tight on space. I'm just under 6 feet tall. The front seat is set to my driving position and I have just about enough knee room, just about enough headroom, and a third passenger would be a really tight squeeze. What's also notable here is the knees up seating position. Now, with the battery pack position under the floor itself has been raised and this is what you get. There's also that very clear link that this is an ICE derived electric and not a born electric, and that comes from this high center tunnel. As for features at the back, you do get a drop down armrest, you do get 2 cup holders, and there is a dedicated zone for the climate control system as well.
The i4's powered rear hatch lifts to reveal a reasonable 470 litres, though a spare tyre would eat up much of the usable space here. So, is the BMW i4 right for you? The ease with which the i4 can fit into your life, helped in no small measure by that generous range, sure makes it a model of interest. It's also fast yet soothing and glamorous yet green. For many, it's a great way to join the green number plate club. But if you're a petrol head just warming up to the idea of going electric, our next video will help you decide which BMW sedan you should spend your 70 odd lakh rupees on. Stay tuned.